So this room was designed by Tony Bon Jovi, and he's actually tried to replicate this room in a few other locations. I believe there's one in Florida and one in Connecticut. And I mean, it's famous for its acoustics, and then that's what they were really trying to emulate. And cool story, John Bon Jovi actually worked as a janitor here as a young person, and then, you know, he would record when he wasn't working, and then became a megastar. So, little fun fact. My name is Gloria Kaba. I'm a producer engineer based in New York City. We are at the Power Station, which was opened in 1977, starting with Studio A, our flagship room. This was the first room built in 1977. Again, notable artists to work here in the early days are Nile Rodgers, Chic, Bruce Springsteen, Madonna. I mean, the list goes on and on. I mean, imagine having all those artists like in the same building at the same time. Freddie Mercury and David Bowie did Under Pressure in Studio C on the 4th floor. I would have loved to be in that room. That's nice. But, you know, honestly, there's a definite energy in the building that you can feel that is definitely like seeped into the walls over the years for sure. You know, it did go through a name change. It was Power Station to start, then it was Avatar, and when Berkeley acquired it in 2017, they reverted back to the original name. More recent notable artists to work here, we had her in a little while ago. We had Frank Ocean, tons of Broadway cast recordings. We did Mean Girls, Hamilton was done here. You know, we do a lot of TV, The Marvelous Miss Maisel, Schmigadoon, so pretty high level stuff. This is the live room, obviously, the famous dome. We usually have mics hanging from there, which need to be replaced, but this room is great. We can close off these 2 large ISO booths, so you can get a lot of isolation in this room. There's also 2 small ISO booths back here, which we often utilize. This is Studio A's control room. So many chairs. Studio A's control room, this is the Neve 8088, which is not original to the room. I believe it was installed in the early 80s. It is an incredible shape and sounds amazing. And our tech staff has done a great job at maintenance and making sure it's probably in as good a shape as it was in 1980. This is my favorite console. Yeah, by far. Sounds amazing, really punchy. The signal flow is very simple on this console. There's not a lot you can do, but for tracking sessions, it's just super easy, super streamlined for sure. My favorite preamps are Neves. I'm usually using actually the Neve 1073s. Most studios will have those as floaters, but sound very similar to the pre's on this board. But yeah, this is definitely my favorite console to work on. So while I was in college, you know, I wanted to take advantage of, you know, being a student and being able to do internships. So I got an internship at a studio in Manhattan called Battery Studios, which was actually located in the offices of Sony at the time. So there were a lot of huge artists coming through. And, you know, as soon as I got into those rooms and, you know, I was around the gear and just that energy, I knew that was exactly where I wanted to be. After I graduated college, you know, I had the connection at Battery. And the manager at the time, Donna Clofer, used to manage at another studio called Right Track, or Legacy at the time. And I sent them my resume, and she put in a good word for me, and I got a job. We've got all these Pultecs, which I think the Bruce picture is out there. There's so many more. I mean, the whole wall was full of Pultecs, but they do get used. They do get used. It sound great. We have Pultecs in every room. But this, actually in this room, like if you look at older pictures, we're filled with tape machines. So if you can imagine, I mean, the control room isn't very big at the moment, but imagine like sort of like having but so much space, but they made it work. There's Bruce. At the Neve 8088, which is still located in Studio A. He was in a few months ago, and actually they tried to recreate this picture. It was pretty cute. What's been interesting for me is that as an engineer, I'm having to prove myself as a producer. Because I've been in situations where, like, naturally when I'm in a studio, I just assume the role of the engineer, even if there isn't one. So there's a lot of sort of juggling you have to do to sort of make sure you are contributing on the creative end. And that can happen in different ways. I mean, that can happen through the engineering, like how you mic, an instrument or a performer, how you're mixing it, the effects you're using. So there's a lot of engineering techniques that helps the production, obviously, but, I've tried to find situations to where I am only going in as a producer and my role is clear from the start. So the first studio I worked at, worked on a lot of major projects, everything from Broadway cast recordings to film projects to mainstream pop, hip hop and R&B. Huge artists at the time. I was an assistant engineer on for Beyonce and Frank Ocean and Kanye West, but one of the people I did assist at the time was Q-Tip. I believe he was working on Watch the Throne at the time. He was mixing, and I believe he had produced on it as well. So I'd met him before, and maybe a few months after that, a good friend of mine, Noah Goldstein, who used to be Kanye's engineer, who I'd actually met at Temple, met at school, he just called me up and said, hey, Tip just finished building his studio in Jersey. You live in Jersey, you have tons of experience, and you've worked with them before. Are you interested? And it came at a very great time because I had just gone freelance as an engineer, and that became my main gig. So I went up to his house, I interviewed, and he had remembered me from the sessions we did. So that's how I got that gig. A lot of those situations, you're not really selected for your technical ability. It's really about being a good fit for the people around and for that artist. So, a lot of it was just having a conversation. And I'm sure he was, sizing up my personality, my temperament, because that goes a long way, like being able to stay calm in high pressure situations, not being distracting in a creative environment, you know what I mean? Just being likable and pleasant to be around. That goes a long way. So that's a lot of it. So working with Tip was an incredible experience. I mean, it led to engineering work on A Tribe Called Quest final project, which had a host of artists, incredible artists on it. Anyone from Elton John, Busta Rhymes, Jack White, Yebba, Anderson .Paak. It was an incredible experience, and all the artists came through. The only artist that didn't come through was Elton John. So on any given day, you could walk into the studio and one, not know who was going to be there, but we were always ready to record and to make sure we captured whatever magic happened at the time. During that time, we also worked on Solange's A Seat at the Table, and I was able to engineer a song on that project, which is actually one of my favorite projects of all time. So the fact that I got to work on that is, incredible. And that definitely led to other work. I mean, I get calls from indie R&B artists all the time, specifically because of my work on that project. So we got a few items right in here right now. We're about to set up for another session, but we have our Yamaha C7. We also have a 9-foot Steinway, which sounds amazing. We've got a Rhodes, got some congas, a few of our amps. There's a ton back here. Again, we can actually close off these rooms to create kind of small isolation booths, which definitely helps out for drum tracking. Bruno Mars's Locked Out of Heaven was done in this room. In one of these ISOs, and again, this room has a very distinct sound. So listening, like after someone told me that, I'm listening to the track and I'm like, of course it was. Sounds like Studio A. But pretty legendary for sure. For me, there's no real clean distinction between the production and the engineering as I approach a project. So I could be producing and, I'm thinking about the mix. So that factors into my sound selection. Say I'm engineering an artist and they want to hear their vocal a certain way. You're selecting effects based on the way they want to hear them, but also keep in mind that it may stay that way. You know what I mean? An artist And I mean, I can say that for myself as well, get used to what they've been hearing. So I like to be intentional and deliberate about the effects I'm grabbing in the production process or early on in the engineering process. I mean, it really depends on what you're putting together and what the vibe of the track is, but I really love stereo delays and playing with that and sort of automating the feedback and the delay time and doing some sort of trippy, dubby effects. It's kind of, one of my favorite things and something I actually picked up working on the Tribe Called Quest project. We did a lot of dub effects, and that's something I've kind of held on to and had, injected into my own projects. But with vocals, I think that's where a lot of the tweaking and playing around seems to happen, especially now with like contemporary R&B and pop. But really in contemporary music, you're hearing a lot of like overly processed vocals to achieve a certain effect. So it really depends on the genre you're working with, the artist, the vibe of the track. I mean, it will change from song to song. Here is our mic locker. We've got all the mics, many mics, really great mics. We've got the M49s, which are awesome on piano. We've got FET 47s, we've got U87s, we've got Cam 84s, which I also love on piano and acoustic guitar and as room mics. We've got, oh look, we know this. It's the SM7B, which I'm sure a lot of our viewers know very well. And then we've got these A76s, which were actually designed by Roy Hendrickson, who designed Studio G. They sound awesome, awesome tube mics, really similar to U67s. We've got our 414s, which are really great condensers. This is, they're pretty affordable, probably in the 1K range. If you're looking for a good condenser, really versatile, really awesome. We've got our TLM 170s, great vocal mics. We've got our Beta 52, our 421s. We have so many. Look at all the 421s. They're all banged up because we use them a lot on toms, so they get hit a lot. We've got our 451s. I love those on snare, along with the 57s. We've got our Cam 86s. We've got the really cool Sony tube mic. Was really popular in the 90s for like pop vocals. Apparently Mariah Carey used to use this mic specifically. As of late, it's become really popular. I know Kanye uses that, Frank Ocean, her, but it's become really popular among the like contemporary pop R&B artists. We've got a U47, which is a classic Neumann. I mean, you hear the likes of Frank Sinatra, Aretha Franklin, like it goes back pretty far, but your classic vocal mic, and all our tubes. My favorite is the U67. That's actually a reissue. So it's a newer 67, but really warm, really full sounding. It just sounds great on vocals. I feel like any vocalist I record, that's usually my go-to mic. And it's the one that's actually hanging up in the live room right now. As far as our production work, I get contacted from artists at different stages in their project. Sometimes they're just starting out and they don't know quite what they want it to sound like, and oftentimes that leads to just a conversation. Like we might meet for coffee. I'm big at like not meeting in a studio because sometimes people feel a little, pressure to perform basically. So, I like to meet people, have a conversation. Where are you from? What do you like to do? What are your influences? And, we figure out, do we even want to work together? It's kind of like dating, you know what I mean? It's just like, all right, let's chat, let's figure out if we want to, take it to the next step. Sometimes I'll have a conversation with an artist, after that initial conversation based on, their influences, the music they're listening to now. I'm big at asking artists to make playlists. And I often find themes or like common threads running through, the songs on those playlists. So it's much easier to sort of build a sonic palette from that. So sometimes it's just me sort of tinkering and tweaking and coming up with tracks and then sending them off. This is Studio G. This room was designed by Roy Hendrickson, who has been on staff as an engineer for several decades. Roy is awesome, but this is an amazing sounding mix room, which was designed and built in the early 2000s. I love it because obviously it sounds great, but it's a little bit more intimate than our other studios, which are really large. Great for mixing, great for writing, Great for doing some vocal overdubs or vocal tracking or whatever you need to get done. So it's a very, very, very flexible space, but really great for writing, and you can really vibe it out, which is why I love it. So we've got the legendary SSL 4000. We've got a bunch of great outboard gear on this end. You've got the 1176s. We've got the distressors, which are probably one of my favorite compressors. Very flexible, very transparent. They've got the great distortion settings on that you can really get some like bite and color to it. Really awesome. We've got LA3As. We've got the Yuri 1176. We've got Neve 33609. We've got, just tons of things. I love working in this room too, because again, I work in a pretty hybrid fashion. So coming in here and running some of the stuff through this gear to really get that analog warmth is really awesome. So yeah, I'm usually making the tracks from scratch. So if I listen to a playlist, I'm sort of picking and choosing. I'm building a drum kit based on the sounds I'm hearing throughout the songs. And it's great, obviously, to have more than one reference, because then it doesn't sound like you're copying this one song. So I'm building drum kits, basically just selecting sounds in the very beginning. I'm looking at song structure. I'm looking at, is there a bridge? Is there not a bridge? I'm looking at song length. Different genres have different song lengths that are pretty standard at this point. So I'm looking at a lot of different things to sort of get close to what I think this artist might like. And then afterwards, if I feel like it could benefit from a live musician, then I'll call up some musicians to play on it. I don't call myself a musician. I play keys enough to write. But I love I have a bunch of talented friends who I love getting on tracks and just really fleshing it out and making it sound human. Many Pultecs, all the Pultecs. Every room has all the Pultecs. We've got the Shep mic pre's, which I really love. They were built to emulate the Neve 1073s and the 31102s. Really, probably my go-to pre in this room. We've got some keyboards. We've got the Mini Moog and the Prophet, which are always fun to play with. It's nice getting out of the box, getting out of the plugins, and really getting your hands on the real thing. So that's always fun. And of course, I've got the Earthquaker pedals set up as my. I use them often as effects boxes for my mixes and for the tracks I'm creating. I really like the tactile, being able to turn the knobs and really manipulate the effects, as opposed to using plugins. Obviously I do use plugins, but it is nice to be able to touch a knob and have it change right at your fingertips. So it's really cool. This is our live room. It's much smaller than the other live rooms in the facility, but really great for overdubs. You can totally track drums in here, vocals, but really great to have, especially when you're mixing or writing. Great space to use if you need to record something quick. I started teaching last fall, which has also been an incredible experience. Honestly, I never really intended on teaching. It's not something I thought about, but obviously because I work here and we are affiliated with Berkeley, when they started thinking about including an engineering course, they asked me to do it, and it felt like just a natural next step. And I do have a little bit of experience teaching from some mentoring and master classes I had done in the past. So yeah, I was game and down to do it, and it's been really rewarding. We do hold engineering classes in this room. We can hold about 10 students in here. After that, it gets a little tight. But it's a great room, very user-friendly. The students learn to use it and they get the hang of it pretty quickly. So it's been a great flexible space for sessions and for education as well. I've been really lucky to work with all the artists I've worked with. A lot of them are artists I idolized growing up. I try to take what I've learned from being in those rooms. Whether it's the techniques or philosophies or whatever it is, and I try to apply that to my work in developing new artists or working with established artists. Just really also, trying to inject myself into that, because for a long time, a lot of my work was helping to facilitate someone else's vision. So now I'm really getting back to, what is my voice and how do I want that to be heard in different ways. I'm really passionate about the music I work on now because I can pick artists who, maybe speak to me in a very specific way. If they're sort of early on in their path, I'm helping them find their voice, but I'm also trying to figure out how I can find my voice within that, to give them, this unique sound that we both can be proud of.